What's going on? Welcome aboard to the first official episode of the Q&A series. This series is long overdue, should have started this years ago, but at the same time I have no regrets. But it was actually a very close friend of mine, Alex, from the Alpha Destiny YouTube channel, and he told me, bro, you need to hop on these Q&As. I'm only really hopping on now, but better late than never, and I'm really happy to be here because there's a difference between me just answering a comment in the comment section, or you DM me and I'll maybe write like a video message, the ones that disappear, compared to you asking me questions and I'm literally answering your question. I'm literally giving you a shout out and answering it in the video with everything timestamped. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's going to bring me a lot closer to you guys. It's going to definitely build up the community, and I'm really excited to tackle on these questions. So I'm actually answering 15 today. I know I said I was only going to do 10, but I'm feeling a little bit generous today, and I'm really liking the questions that I'm seeing on my phone. So besides that, feeling pretty good, and we're just gonna jump right into it. So Dipe asks, Phil, how much volume do you tend to do for each body part per week? So this is a very loaded question. This is a term I'm gonna start using in a lot of these questions, because if something's a loaded question, I'm not gonna dedicate 20-30 minutes to it, but just to answer this, my volume is going to vary from your volume compared to the next guy, the next girl, next woman. So I'm going to answer that question with another question, which is, why does it matter how much volume I'm doing? You should be looking at how much you're doing. But if you're just curious to know how much I'm doing, I could talk about my programming in the future and maybe later videos. But as far as this video is concerned, I'm running an upper-lower routine. So I'm in the gym 4 times per week. So I have an upper intensity, I have a lower intensity, upper volume, and a lower volume. And obviously I have the conditioning at the end of each session. And my volume, for example, per body part, it's really gonna vary. For example, I'm a real back guy. I'm into back training a lot. So as you can see from the photo right there. So I prioritize back, and that also goes into the whole brand of the silver back, back, shoulders, triceps. Those are the muscles that I personally like, but you may not be into those muscles. You may have other goals in mind. So the volume that you have, there's a lot of variables that come into play. It's, for example, goals, injury history, recovery, how good are you at recovering, and also you have the factors of junk volume, or just throwing in volume just to throw it in, or is there a purpose to it? So for example, there's a lot of specificity. This is important for performance athletes who want to get stronger at a given exercise. They're going to do a lot of exercises that are very specific, and I'm all for specificity. But you also have to understand there's variability in the mix too. If you're too specific, you might run into certain muscular imbalances. So if you want to have a very balanced program, there's a lot of factors to consider. That's why everybody is very individual on this, and there's a lot of things you want to consider. But one of the big things to answer your question is recovery. What are you able to recover from? How hard are you able to drill and just pump a bunch of volume into a certain body part and recover well from it? You don't want to be sore for a whole week, or you don't want to do any junk volume to the point where it's just not necessary. So you want to find that sweet spot that works for you, and this is going to vary for you on your journey. There may be certain periods where you can handle more volume, certain periods where you can handle less. So it really is a loaded question. Strength Hacks Coaching. He wants to know, what are your top tips to speed up recovery between workouts? Okay, I have a couple of things. This is kind of similar to the last question, but generally speaking, 8 hours of sleep, more or less. Maybe if you're more active, you have very high volume in the gym, you'd probably be getting 9 hours. It wouldn't hurt you. As far as nutrition, you want to make sure that's intact as well. And as far as junk volume, if you do too much junk volume, just exercises that aren't necessary in your program, they don't really have a purpose, you're just kind of doing them just to do them, you don't have a real reason why you're putting in that extra volume, that's going to tap into your recovery. So like I mentioned in the last question, you want to find that sweet spot of having specificity, variability, and you want to have obviously progressive overload in the mix. So there's a lot of things. It's like an eclipse. Everything has to be lined up properly. Everything has to have a purpose. You have to know why you're doing X exercise. You have to know why you're eating X food. Don't just go through the motions. Don't just be like, oh, it is what it is. If you want to get very specific results, you have to do very specific things. And as far as your recovery is concerned, those are the things that are at the top of the pyramid. There's nutrition, there's the sleep, there's programming considerations. You don't want too much junk volume. And then there's, you know, additional stuff. People get massages, people get take like Epsom salt baths, but these are really like at the bottom of the pyramid. If we're talking about the top, the most bang for your buck, it's gonna be those things I just mentioned earlier. So Tanner Smith wants to know favorite exercises for big glutes and hamstrings besides the squat and deadlift. There's a lot of them, but I'm just gonna mention, if you're not doing RDLs and you want to build big hamstrings and big glutes, you're really missing out, because RDLs, they give you the weighted stretching effect. This is why a lot of bodybuilders are so big on RDLs. You'll see a lot of bodybuilders, they won't even do conventional deadlifts, but they'll hammer the RDLs. And the reason why is because you have the weighted stretch, you can use heavy weights, there's different tempos. You could do, for example, like a snatch grip with a pause. You could do a regular grip with a 5-second eccentric. So you could really play around with the tempos, rep ranges. You could do sets of 5, you could do sets of 10. But what you're asking me is big glutes and hamstrings without squats and deadlifts. So I'm assuming you're already doing those lifts, but you just want to know what else you could add into the mix. Hands down, glute ham raises, if you could do them properly. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, a lot of people, they tend to use a lot of lumbar extension when they're doing them, so they don't really get the benefits of recruiting the hamstrings and the glutes because they're so extended. So what you could do is use a band, hold on to a medicine ball, and this will give you a lot of the posterior rib cage expansion, which will help you get back on your heels. And heel reference is important. Heel reference is essential for recruiting the hamstrings. If you look at like the gait cycle and things of that nature, you want to have a lot of heel reference in your lifts. And one of the best lifts for that is the glute ham raise. You could put a band around you, so that way you could have additional assistance, and that way you could start doing them right away. You could do some iso holds, so you could just hold onto the medicine ball. If you have a very strong band, if you're strong enough, you could even do full range of motion, but you want to maintain that stack I keep talking about, and this is really going to hammer your hamstrings. As far as the glutes are concerned, you could do some single leg work. So I know you said no squats, but as far as like variations that are not the squat, we're talking like Bulgarian split squats. You could do those with like a safety bar. You could do them with the Zercher. You could do high field squats are pretty cool too. High field split squats, I mean, because it's just one leg at a time, up and down, like a lot of bodybuilders will do. It takes a lot of the stability out of it. There's tons of different lifts you could do, but those are definitely some of my go-tos. Vic C. Roy wants to know, Salut Phil, j'espère que tu vas bien. My strength dramatically decreased from stepping back from actual weightlifting. How do I regain strength quickly? So this is kind of a loaded question too. It depends how long you've been away from the gym. So I know different places in the world. You're speaking French, so you're probably from Quebec, you're probably from France. We've been closed for like, 8 months, 6 months, a year. Who knows at this point, but the gyms are constantly being closed and reopening. So I don't know exactly how long you've been away from the gym, but my personal recommendation would be when you get back into the gym, you want to lower down your percentages a lot. You want to lower your volume, your work capacity probably went to shit. So you want to find a way to get back into the mix, start reintroducing lighter loads, and this will also help you work on your technique. Like you said, you haven't been in the gym for a long time, and if you guys follow like RP training, I know there's like mixed thoughts about it. You could start at, for example, RP means rate of perceived expenditure. You could start off at like RP 6, so you're leaving 4 reps in the tank at the bare minimum, so that way you're very far away from failure. This will help you work on your technique and just get back into the groove. So you could just take a lot of the routine you were doing before, but lower the volume a bit, because you probably were doing a certain routine where the volume was pretty high, and then out of nowhere the certain circumstances happen for the gyms. But you could, for example, lower your volume. So if you're doing like 4 sets of 10 on squats and you come back in the gym, do 2 sets of 10. You're already going to get super sore off that anyways. Use lighter loads, so you're doing like RP 6, build your way up and in linear fashion, and that's pretty much it. So Matt B wants to know, are wall handstand push-ups better for hypertrophy than the overhead press? Okay, so this is a great question. A lot of people have been wondering about. Okay, so Matt B wants to know, are wall handstand push-ups better for hypertrophy than the overhead press? This is a good question. I'm sure a lot of people are curious because of the gyms being closed for so long. A lot of people have been doing handstand push-ups at home, and certain people want to know, is it better than the overhead press? And just to answer that question is that you said a word here, which was hypertrophy. Whenever we're talking about hypertrophy, we're stepping into the world of bodybuilders. The reason why is because that's their main priority. It is hypertrophy. They're not trying to become the most agile, athletic, and fast individuals. They're focused on building muscle. And once they build a muscle, they're focused on posing. And that's just that. So just to answer your question, when was the last time you guys saw bodybuilders do handstand push-ups? I know you guys are going to reference me, oh, well, Arnold did them in back in the day, and there's photos to prove this. This is true, and there's certain old school bodybuilders who did them, but there's not that many. I can name you way more bodybuilders who do standing overhead press than bodybuilders, or just people in general who do the handstand push-up. So am I bashing the handstand push-up? Absolutely not. As far as athleticism, of carryover to a lot of stuff in calisthenics, if you want to just be great with your body weight overall, you want to be able to maneuver with it, it might be good for fighters as well. Handstand push-up is definitely where it's at. But if we're talking about hypertrophy, I would definitely go with an overhead press. And also, you're not upside down either. Not all the blood is rushing to your head, especially after you start getting into heavier weights, start having like a 50-pound weight vest, doing handstand push-ups. So there are different tools in the toolbox for different purposes. I'm not going to be bashing one, say, oh, this one's bad and this one's not. The handstand push-up is very great for overall athleticism, might be great for fighters, calisthenics athletes, but the overhead press, done standing and done seated, I would put more of my emphasis on those lifts if I'm trying to build hypertrophy. I'm trying to build the biggest shoulders possible. You can best believe I'm going to do more of those than handstand push-ups. But once again, handstand push-ups have their place, especially in a situation like a lockdown. You have no access to any weights whatsoever. Your money is very limited. You can't afford any weights. You can best believe I'm going to grab 2 cinder blocks and I'm going to start working on my handstand push-ups. But if you have access to weights, you have access to a fully decked out gym, then why don't you just do some overhead work? So that's just my 2 cents on it. And also another quick analysis on this is, if handstand push-ups were really like the go-to for shoulder hypertrophy, you would see a lot more bodybuilders, even lightweight bodybuilders. I know certain bodybuilders who are like, over 200 pounds, it might be too heavy to do that kind of stuff. Let's say you take a bodybuilder who's like 165, 170, you would see him doing way more handstand push-ups, but even at that, you still see the lightweight bodybuilders doing more shoulder presses, Arnold presses, standing overhead, seated, super high incline. They tend to gravitate more towards those presses. So I hope that answers your question. So AbSac wants to know what to do on a percentage-based 5-week program where I reduce the reps by 1 each week on compound lifts. I started at 5x5 and was supposed to do 5 sets of 1 on the week that the gym's locked down again. Should I continue from where I left off, start over at 5x5, or somewhere in between? Okay, me personally, I would say that since the gym's been locked down for a while and you probably haven't had access to weights in a while, your work capacity probably went down. So I would recommend you just go back to the 5x5 and you work your way down again. There's no point in doing 5 sets of 1. You're working up to singles. Your work capacity is not that good. You probably lost some muscle in the process. Just take a quick step back and get back to the volume, get back to the 5x5. Even that might be a lot of volume for you, but keep in mind that your work capacity is down. So you got to get that work capacity back up. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, it's not going to destroy me. That's why you're supposed to do lower percentages. So for example, if you were doing 5 sets of 1 and you were at like a RP 9, 9.5, you could go back to your 5x5. You haven't been in the gym for a while. Go to like RP 6. Lower the weights down a bit. Leave some reps in the tank. Stay far away from failure. Get your technique back. Your technique's probably a bit sloppy anyways. So this will give you more practice because you're doing more reps, and just to build your way back up. And then later on, as the weeks go by, then you could experiment with the 5 sets of 1. All right, so Chibs wants to know, you have said in the past videos that when you train your neck, you use lighter weight that you used to. Do you still use progressive overload and then increase the reps, or do you think progressive overload is not needed on the neck? This is a good question. This is actually a question I've received quite a bit in the past when I was uploading more neck videos. If you look back in my oldest videos, I was posting a lot of them back then. I was really like big on neck training, and now I'm actually getting right back into it, and I'm just training it once a week, 4 sets of 25 on the basic neck curl, in case you're curious. But what you're asking me is about progressive overload for the neck. Of course it's needed. And the reason why it's needed is because it's a muscle group. So if it's a muscle, it needs progressive overload. I don't care how small it is, how big it is, if it's your bicep, if it's your quads, whatever the case is. Big or small, you need progressive overload, or else you're just teaching it how to maintain. And the neck is no different. But where it gets a bit complicated with the neck is that there's a lot of accessory muscles that'll kick in. So if you're doing like a neck curl, for example, it's easy for the lats to kick in. It's easy for your grip to kick in. So you have to find ways. The neck is a touchy topic, but overall, progressive overload is important. I like higher repetitions. The reason why is because the range of motion is so small on like neck curls, neck extensions. As far as that, you still want to get stronger, but the injury risks do go up. You know, like I wouldn't recommend to somebody today to be working up towards like a 135 neck curl. I'm bigger now on pause reps and tempos and higher reps for the neck. So you could do, for example, a good goal to shoot for the neck, for example, 4 sets of 25 on the neck curl, and you could do a pause at the bottom, a pause at the top. You really try to limit the lats, try to limit the hands. You're taking as many muscle groups out of the mix as possible. And you could even play around with tempos. 3-second eccentric. You could even play around with tempos for the concentric. So for example, you could do like a 3-3-3 tempo. 3-second eccentric, 3-second pause, 3-second concentric. There's just an idea I'm just giving you. And you could work progressive overload with that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your neck numbers are, as long as they're going up. Nobody really cares how much you neck curl anyways. What's really important is that you're stimulating the neck's getting bigger, and you could get a lot more out of less weight if you apply the parameters I was just saying. Okay, so old generation wants to know, how can you be sure that you're gaining quality muscle during a bulk and not just fat and water? In 5 years now, will the person who bulks and cuts, yo-yo man, be different than someone who eats at maintenance, assuming the fact that the training is the same? I'm talking from a muscle building perspective. Okay, so this is a very loaded question, and this isn't a cop-out, but you don't mention how much of a bulk we're talking. You say gaining quality muscle during a bulk, not just fat and water. What kind of bulk are we talking about here? Like, it's, for example, right? Let's say from the year of 2020 to 2025, you have two twins. One of them stays at 15% body fat, and the other one is doing what's called the yo-yo effect, which is what you say. But how much of a bulk are we talking? Is the yo-yo like 20% off season, 10% when he's lean? Or is it like a smaller bulk, like 18 or 17%, and maybe like 13%? There's a lot of different factors that come into play. And then you're right, the fact that the training is the same. The training's not necessarily going to be the same, and the reason why is because you're going to be a lot weaker when you cut. But it depends on what kind of cutting you're talking about. It depends how dramatic it is on that level. So I understand the intention of the question, but there's a lot of factors that are really missing for me to give you a concrete answer. Okay, so Mick Treatment wants to know, I did the heaviest rack pull session of my lifting career, 5 plates each side, and performed static holds for 5 to 10 seconds for about 5 reps. It was super heavy, but no trap DOMs at all, which is delayed onset muscle soreness. The previous week, I did 3.5 plates for power shrugs and had DOMs for the next day. Should I stick to power shrugs with less weight, or move up to heavier weights on rack pulls and or more reps, longer holds, etc.? Thanks, brother. So with the way you're talking in this message, I'm gonna assume that you're talking about the above the knee rack pull. And the reason why is because a lot of people tend to associate that one with a lot of trap DOMs. But you didn't specify what kind of rack pull you're talking about. Is it a rack pull could be mid shin all the way to hip level? So what kind of rack pull are you talking about? You have to specify a bit more. So I don't want to make any assumptions, but I would say I've already spoken about the whole rack pull thing. Let's say you're talking about above the knee, because I think that's where you're getting at here. I've already discussed this in many of my old videos, like 2017, that I don't do rack pulls above the knee. That was a phase I was going through, and I was just, you know, I was just experimenting like a scientist in a laboratory. And I'm definitely glad that I went through that experience, because I just had to go through it. I had to try it out for myself to be able to give a valid opinion on it. But having gone through that phase of all the partials, I think partials have their place. It all depends on context, but we're talking about building bigger traps. And hands down, what I personally find, I know I've spoken a lot about, for example, snatch grip high pulls in the past. From what I know now, a lot of people can't perform it properly. The learning curve's too complicated for them, and I understand. And some people even argue I can't even do it properly, but I think I do it well enough to not get injured and just to get my traps bigger. But even myself, I've taken it a bit more easy on the snatch grip high pulls. We're talking about shrugs now. And shrugs, I like to call it more of like bodybuilding territory. A lot of bodybuilders are huge on shrugs. I know some powerlifters do them too, but generally speaking, a lot of bodybuilders are big on shrugs. The learning curve is not complicated. You could do them in a power style. You could do them in a strict style. But to answer your question, because I know you're big on, the trap soreness and all that kind of stuff, do snatch grip shrugs, 5 sets of 20, which adds up to 100 reps. So you get a lot of volume in. And the reason why I like higher reps on shrugs because the range of motion is so short. So when you do like a snatch grip, which stresses the upper back even more in the traps, on top of that, you have the higher reps. You could do them, for example, in a power style where you use a slight bit of leg drive, but you maintain the weight on your heels. So not too much of your weight is shifted forward. And you could do pause reps at the top. You could do regular strict. You could play around with different variations of the snatch grip shrug, but that would definitely be my go-to. If we were talking about the rack pull above the knee, I would personally drop it from the program in 99% of cases. So Katz Renault wants to know, amazing question, do you think you can achieve a really good level of fitness working out at home versus gym? If at home, what's the basic equipment you recommend in your home gym? Thanks. So as far as you can achieve a really good level of fitness, what kind of fitness level are we talking about? Because what's considered a good level of fitness for me is different from you, and you didn't specify that, so I can't really help you there. But to answer your next question, if we're talking about a home gym, hands down you benefit from, it depends on your budget now. So how much money are we talking about here? Do you have, for example, $100 to invest in the gym? You have 1,000, you have 10,000? What's the range of money we're talking about? But let's just say, for example, I don't want to make assumptions. Say you have $1,000. You want to invest in a home gym. You want to invest in some equipment. I'm going to make a separate video on this because I think a lot of people will benefit, especially since the fact that a lot of people are starting home gyms, garage gyms, studios. But hands down, pull-up bar, a barbell. And the reason why barbell is because you can do so many different exercises with it. You can even put it in the corner and create like a landmine. So you can do landmine presses, T-bar rows, tons of different variations you could do with the barbell. That's definitely going to give you the most bang for your buck. Even if you had, for example, just a barbell, and then you had like 2.5, 5 pound, 10 pound plates, 25, and even like a couple 45s, you could get a lot of muscular development and strength just with that alone. Even forget the pull-up bar. You just have a barbell and have a lot of plates and have different plate ranges, so you could just make constant progress every week. You could do so much with that just alone. You don't even need a squat rack. You could just, for example, just clean the weight into the front rack, or you could just do it squat down, deadlift it up, and then get into a Zercher. So you could do, for example, a lot of front squats, Zercher squats. You could do a lot of single leg work, deadlifting variations off the ground, rowing variations, floor pressing variations. You could do a lot of arms. If we're talking about bang for your buck, I would definitely invest into a barbell and some plates. Okay, so Iron John wants to know, when did you start transitioning from full body to upper lower, and will you ever go back to full body? I personally don't think I'm ever going to go back to full body, and the reason why is because I like being in the gym 4 times per week, whereas full body, it's more, very often it's 3 times per week, full body. I rarely ever see full bodies being done 5-6 days a week. It's usually like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type thing. And I was doing that, and I had a conditioning day on the 4th day. That's when I started training 4 days a week. Then I thought to myself, if I could train 4 times per week, if I have this kind of time at my disposal, why don't I just do an upper lower routine and do some conditioning at the end of each session? And I posted, for example, my conditioning workouts, and I posted the reason why I like upper lowers for many individuals. So it really depends. Even certain novices, for example, could run upper lowers. I mentioned it all in the video, but as far as answering your question, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to a full body. I don't care how busy I get with business. I don't care if I have a family with 2 kids. I'm not going to train 3 times per week. I'm always going to try to keep it at 4. And There's also psychological benefits to this as well. Just being in the gym more just makes me happier. Being in the gym less, it makes me a lot less happy, and I have extra energy and extra anger that I don't know what to do with. But if I'm in the gym more often, it's just happiness overall. So Steven _ Alexander _ Vav Lattice, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, wants to know any arm training advice. I'm torso dominant and my arms lag. 42.5 to 43 inch chest, but my arms were 15, been training for a year. Okay, well, I'm personally not the best guy to be talking about arm training advice because I'm still under construction as well. But my arms have gone up. They just haven't gone up at a very fast rate, but I have been getting a lot of comments lately saying, oh wow, your arms aren't even that bad. You just have body dysmorphia. They look better than before. They look a lot leaner. You have that vein going down, all that kind of stuff. But what I would personally say, and what I'm personally experimenting with at the moment, is training more like a bodybuilder. Check out, for example, Hypertrophy Coach on YouTube. He has a great YouTube channel on bodybuilding. And this isn't just stuff that applies to guys who are enhanced. A lot of what he says actually applies to natural lifters. And if you're trying to get the most muscular development possible, you'd be a fool to not apply bodybuilding principles, especially for the biceps. Bodybuilders hands down have the biggest biceps. Yeah, you could say gymnasts, but generally speaking, if you look at a lot of bodybuilders, they take their bicep training very seriously. They have great mind-muscle connection. They're locked in. They do the posing. They're in the perfect environment to build massive arms. People also say, I heard this one quote, bodybuilding biceps, powerlifter triceps. Powerlifters have great triceps. You can actually start incorporating, bands and chains and just post on Instagram. This is an exercise I got from Hypertrophy Coach. It's the chain dip, for example. And I'm pretty sure that comes from a powerlifting circle, but definitely builds bigger arms. So just to answer your question, it would be beneficial for you to start applying bodybuilding parameters and principles into your training. And some of those parameters and principles are playing around with rep ranges, looking at tempo, looking at the execution of the exercise. How locked in are you? For example, you see a lot of lifters who they'll just swing the weights up and down on their curls. There's no real purpose. They don't really feel the biceps half the time, if at all. They probably won't even get a pump or anything. And I think pump training is very important for the arms. I don't think it's really that important. I think it has its place for other muscle groups, but for the arms, especially from what I'm hearing from a lot of other lifters, if you, for example, train your biceps and triceps for 20 minutes, and you don't even have a pump, nothing, even the next day you feel nothing, chances are they might not grow as well as they had a really good pump. You're really sore the next day. You just build a great mind-muscle connection with them overall. You can't go wrong. And a lot of this happens when you're locked in. So for example, a lot of preacher curls, a lot of strict extensions, lifts of that nature. And then as far as the compound lifts are concerned, JM presses, weighted dips, close grip bench, you could add bands or chains depending on your experience level. And that's about it. So Sarah Mathers 90 wants to know, great idea, love the smile. Question, can you break some fitness myths, set the record straight? An example, women who lift weights will get muscular. So I'm just going to address that one because I have a lot of questions to go over. But women who lift weights will get very muscular is hands down, and I made a post on this on Instagram, the biggest myth in lifting history as far as I'm concerned. And it's really holding a lot of women back because there's a lot of, for example, women bodybuilders or maybe, CrossFitters or just women who lift heavy, or maybe they're just bodybuilders and they're more about contractions and stuff of that nature, but they're enhanced. And a lot of these women, to protect their reputation and in order to sell their supplements, they're going to claim they're natural. And this actually scares a lot of women because they're thinking to themselves, wow, if she's natural and look at what she's lifting, maybe I should be lifting a quarter of what she's lifting because I don't want to look like her, but she's enhanced. So her testosterone is higher. Her testosterone may even be higher than some men. And there's a lot of guys, for example, who are really struggling to build muscle, a lot of skinny individuals, and they have a lot of testosterone at their disposal. And they're having trouble building muscle. So for example, if you're a woman who has a lot lower testosterone, It just doesn't work like that. If that was the case, you'd see a lot more bulky women walking around, but you don't. And whenever people say, oh, I got really bulky when I started lifting weights, you ask them, hey, show me a picture. They never report back with a picture because it never happened. They were never bulky. And in some cases, for example, let's say a woman does look bulky. Maybe her body fat's just really high. Maybe she just has really thick wrists. Maybe she's just like a thick person overall and she has a bulky look. So if a woman weighs like 200 pounds, obviously she's going to look a lot bigger. But if you take a woman, for example, who's 130 pounds, maybe 135, maybe 140, and you have her lifting weights, she's not going to have that bulky appearance. She's not going to have that thick neck and those big traps and veins just popping out of her arms, at least in most cases. Unless if she's like genetically gifted, maybe she has some great vascularity going on. But generally speaking, you know, you take a woman who's, you know, at a relatively light weight, she's not too heavy, and she just trains in a regular program. She does lots of squats, lunges, you know, rows, lifts like that. She's going to look great. She's not going to have that roided out female bodybuilder look, especially if she's not natural. So hope that answers your question. All right, so the last question of the day, Samuel XC, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, wants to know, what is a typical day in your life like, and what are your current goals? So first things first, I don't try to portray this extravagant lifestyle. I'm just an average guy trying to build his business. And I have a lot of goals. I have a lot of deadlines for this year, and I'm just trying to put everything into action. As far as like a day in the life's concerned, it's nothing crazy, man. It's like wake up around 6:30, eat, then around 7 I train. Once I'm done training, I'll either see a client in person or I'll have somebody offline. So I might be writing up a program, or I might have like a Skype call, things of that nature. It's either online or offline client. Then right after that, I might eat again, and then I jump into studying. So for example, I'm doing the biomechanics course by Connor Harris, and I'm just trying to expand my knowledge on certain things regarding fitness. And I'm always looking into nutrition as well, because obviously that's just as important. And then once I'm done learning more and more, I try to write down what I learn so I can make it into a video, so I could deliver it to you guys in the best way possible. And then once I'm done that, then I'll get ready for work. So I actually work full-time security. And by the time I get home, it's like way past midnight, and then I have to, so I don't get that much sleep. I should be sleeping more, but given my schedule, it's a little bit tight. But I tend to sleep more on the weekends. For example, like a Saturday night, sleep more. And Saturday night, that's when I have a bit more downtime. I have more time to myself, and I just enjoy myself, might go out a little bit, whatever the case is. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty basic. It's just really like under construction, in the process, just trying to get the work done, trying to expand the business. I want to give you guys as much value as possible, make the delivery as good as possible, make my message as clear as possible. And that's just that. So I hope that answers your question. And as far as the Q&A is concerned, I've been talking for a while. I haven't done this since like the Christmas Q&A special, or it might have been like an Alpha Destiny Q&A I did with him, but I haven't talked this much in a camera in a long time, besides like interviewing people. But I'm answering the questions this time. So hope you guys watch the video to its completion. And if you guys have any more questions for the next episode, that'll be on the 14th of April, let me know down below. I'm really excited to read them. And I'm still contemplating on if I should make it 10 questions or 15, because I actually had a lot of fun with this. But we'll see as we go along. It'll most likely be around 10 to 15. But hope you guys have a good weekend. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Instagram, PG.Coaching. And with that being said, hope they helped, and I'll see you guys soon.